What's up, my little bookish dweebs? Okay, so it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been a very long while, actually. I think what we're looking at, like 2.5, 3 weeks, something like that. I don't know. Either way, the reason it's been so long is because I had a baby. I mean, I technically didn't because scientifically I can't, but my partner did have a baby. It's our baby. Either way, we had a baby who is now just over 2 weeks old. It's been quite the ride, but it's been lovely. It's been fantastic. But that's basically why I've not done any videos pretty much anywhere for a while, because my routine has just been survival. I've had 2 weeks off work. I'm now going into a third-ish week or 2.5 weeks. I go back Tuesday. But it's been basically a job of survival. We've been trying to get out where we can, meeting people where we can, sleeping when we can, that sort of thing. So that's why there's not been any videos. But I'm hoping to try and get back onto track a little bit over the next few weeks as I go back into a work routine, try and get some things done there. We'll see what happens. Who knows? Either way, here's a video. So we're now quite deeply into July. I'm now recording this on the 12th of July, which means I have not yet done my June reading roundup. So I thought I would do that. Now, as I said, I had a baby in the latter half of June, so I didn't actually end up reading a lot. Leading up to the birth of the baby, I also didn't read a lot as well because my mind was just like, okay, I'm just waiting for that to happen. So I didn't think I could pick up a book because I was always thinking about that. But either way, I have 4 books to talk to you about today that I read in June, and I'll give you an idea of whether I liked them, whether I didn't like them. And I'm also going to talk about some of the books I'm hoping to kind of read throughout July. Whether I'll finish anything in July, I don't know. So my July reading roundup's going to be probably quite short because, as I said, 12th already, not a book finished, but we'll see how we get on. Either way, let's get into the 4 books that I read in June and then some of the books that I'm hoping to read in July. So I started off June by finishing off the original Hunger Games trilogy with Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. Now, I kind of did a little video of this over on my TikTok, which feels like a long time ago now because it was a long time ago because it was in June. But either way, basically saying that it felt fine. The problem is, I think, is I know Hunger Games. Everyone knows Hunger Games. Everyone knows what happens. And so when you go and you read it, having not grown up with it, I didn't grow up with Hunger Games, so I don't have that kind of same nostalgia as with Harry Potter where I know what's going on, and the reason I'm enjoying it is because I know what's going on. This, it just kind of felt like I was already reading something I knew. Additionally, we're now in a kind of era where there are lots of books in the same sort of genre, that kind of post-apocalyptic, people surviving, fighting for their lives, the kind of underbody of people, the upper class of people fighting against each other. That's done a lot now, and this whole idea of you go into an arena and fight for your life is a big thing. It's features in a lot of books. So it felt, I'm going to say repetitive, and that feels awful to say because this was the first to essentially do it. I don't know if it was the first, but it was the biggest first to do it. So it's not repetitive in that sense. But from my point of view, having already understood Hunger Games is a thing, and these other books have gone on to do a very similar thing, it felt like I'd already kind of read this. Now, Mockingjay is different in that there are different elements to it. It's rounding off this idea that Katniss Everdeen started off in the Hunger Games in the first book, started this small idea of a rebellion in the third book. She is this big rebellion figure. Now, the thing I always found really interesting about the Hunger Games is, unlike a lot of the other rebellion kind of books where they're all kind of underground and they're hidden and they're not in the public eye, and then all of a sudden they rise up, they're having stuff broadcast. So the rebellion are broadcasting stuff across Pan Am to the people who are also part of the rebellion. So they are kind of doing this propaganda and promoting themselves, which is a really interesting aspect of this and something that I did find quite cool about it. But other than that, as I said, it kind of felt like it was a book that was rounding everything off. You knew kind of what was going to happen because it's the final book in the trilogy. The people that were needed to die, the people that needed to live, all of that sort of stuff. So it was fine. I would probably give it like a 4.25 out of 5 because nothing stunning about the writing, nothing stunning about the plot. As I said, I kind of already knew what was happening, but I've got a lot of time for what this book did for the genre. I think in theory, this should probably go down as a classic. This series will go down as a classic. In 20, 30 years time, people will still be talking about the Hunger Games, what it did for the genre, what it did for cinema, I think as well, you could argue, and what it did for YA fantasy, getting people into this kind of idea of dystopian books, which we've now seen a billion of since. But yeah, that's Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins. That was my first read of June. Next up, I wanted to pick up something that I have read before, that I know I enjoyed before, and that was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. If you didn't know that the Jurassic Park film is based on a book, you now do. It's based on this book. Technically the second book, so you know how in the original Jurassic Park trilogy, we're going to call it a trilogy though, I think that would be harsh to the first film. The second book in this trilogy, in the cinema trilogy, was being written at the same time that they were filming the actual second film. So they don't match up quite the same. There are some same elements and this sort of thing, but I think the film actually influenced the book in the end. I read that somewhere. Either way, this came very much before the film. And you can kind of tell that. So there's a lot of similarities in this to the film. The idea that there is a Jurassic Park, there is a Richard Hammond, a lot of the characters are the same. They all kind of have the same sort of personalities and they have this on-off relationship with each other. And they go to a park and things don't turn out great. We all know the story. That all happens in here. However, about halfway through, things do change a little bit in terms of the plot. Things happen that don't happen in the film. In the very latest Jurassic World film, there's a scene with a T-Rex in a river and some lifeboats or some raft boats, whatever you want to call them. That happens in this book, which is a really interesting scene and quite kind of tense, clever horror scene. And they didn't portray that in the first Jurassic Park films. They've done it in the new Jurassic World film, but that's just a small example of some things that are in this that aren't in the original Jurassic Park film. Additionally, some of the characters work out a little bit differently. I think the two kids' ages are swapped round. I think the boy is older, Lexi is younger. Lexi is just quite annoying in the whole thing. She just has a go at the boy the whole time, and I've forgotten his name, and then just cries, and it's a little bit annoying, but either way, fine. And then all the rest of the characters generally do the same thing, but there are some small things. There's a big thing at the end, which would mean the second film would make a lot more sense if this were to happen, so I'm not going to spoil it. But if you've not read the book and you enjoy the films, I'd highly still recommend reading the book. This one is more scientifically based, so I think, and I say that in kind of not actual science, because a lot of it is just theoretical science in kind of, okay, this could happen if this was a thing, but scientifically that's not possible. But anyway, there's a lot more science in here. There's a lot more about chaos theory. I think Michael Crichton in general likes his science side of things. So that's in here. That's still enjoyable. I like that. 4.25, 4.5 out of 5. You know my rating system by now. That would make sense as to why I said I've enjoyed this and Hunger Games was average. I just don't have a very good rating system. Check back my previous videos. Go on to lukeharkness.com if you want to find out other stuff. Follow me across social media at lukesblog1 on pretty much every platform to find out why my ratings are so odd. But either way, there we go. That was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, my second read of June. Then I started The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Now I picked this up because I intend to read James by Percival Everett. I've just looked down to see him. I'm hoping to read that this month, so there's a little clue as to what's going on there. That is basically why I picked this book up, because I went to read James and everybody said, no, you need to read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn to understand who James is and to get a bit of a backstory as to what you're about to read, as it were. So picked up The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Now this was a very difficult book to get into. Started reading it, it was very difficult to read because of the way that it's written, the way that the words are broken up, because it literally was written in the mid 1800s in a very South American or Southern America, I think someone corrected me, Southern American sort of area, and as a result the twang in a lot of the words is very different. He literally uses like apostrophes to break up words to make them sound like how they would be spoken. Very difficult to read, so I listened to the free audiobook version of this, which had Elijah Wood, who is Frodo in Lord of the Rings, reading it, and that made it a lot easier because he added the twang naturally, and he phonetically it then sounded how I would imagine it would sound, so that helped. So if you struggle reading it, I would recommend picking it up. That's actually free on Audible as well. So that's that. But either way, the story itself was good. Now I know this was written, I think originally as kind of individual newspaper or magazine stories and then was combined into a whole book in the end. So there are some parts of it which feel like they are individual little kind of stories combined. But either way, it does start to get into a flow towards the end. But you can tell where each individual thing was published because something happens in that episode. Something big, not episode, sorry, but something happens in that article, which is a big moment, and that's how the book's broken up. But overall it was good. I think it's a difficult one to review because it's a book written literally more than like 150 160 years ago now, so what was experienced as a good book then is gonna be different now. One of those classic books where you think, is it a classic book because it's actually a really good book that it will be timeless, or is it a classic book because it was written so long ago and was mass published? Who knows? I think it is still a good book. There's some powerful messaging about racism, about equality, about the differences in people, about how you should treat people based on who they are, not what they look like, where they come from. All of those sort of things are in this, and that's a heartwarming feature of this as well. So if that's something you enjoy in your books, I would highly recommend picking up The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. So I would probably give this like a 4.25, 4.5 out of 5. Enjoyed it, difficult to read, so maybe try the Audible if you're not a good reader. I'm a not good reader, and you may be a great reader and still struggle with it because of the way that it was written. So I don't think you should ever hamper yourself into, oh, I'm not going to bother with this book because it was so difficult to read, when you could listen to the audiobook, and that's much easier to listen to. So yeah. Enjoyed it. Would I recommend people pick it up? I don't think you need to pick it up. It's not essential. If you're picking up James and I finish James and then I say, yeah, you definitely need to read this first to understand James, then maybe I'll go and say that. But at the moment, I wouldn't say a necessary read, but still enjoyable, and I can understand why it's gone on to be such a great book, especially if you consider when it was written. So that's The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, my third book I read in June. And then the last book I read in June was The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth, Stein, I don't know. This is a book about a dog. dog who literally narrates the entire book. It's told from his point of view, to a point where there are certain parts of the story that we want to understand, but we can't understand because he wasn't there as a dog, which is quite an interesting aspect, so he makes it up. Either way, tells the story of him growing up as a puppy and meeting his owner, who is called, I cannot remember, but the dog's name is Enzo. And his owner is a racing driver, and it's the story of him being a racing driver and him meeting a woman and having children and the life they have together, both him as a dog and the owner, and also the owner with his own life. And it's good. It's not amazing, it wasn't mind-blowing, there wasn't like a vast amount of kind of story going on, there was stuff just happening, kind of like a life would happen. I enjoyed it because it was written from the point of view of a dog, but I also found a little part of it kind of difficult because he says quite early on, I am a dog, I can't speak human or understand human, but I can hear them and I know what they're saying to me. So that's kind of how he depicts what's going on in the world. It was fine, it wasn't fantastic. As I said, written from the point of view of a dog, which is sometimes difficult to kind of get the understanding of and, you know, make believable, if it makes sense, but overall, the story was good. There are some emotional bits in this as well, which I have appreciation for. I always appreciate a book that tells a story of a lifetime or tells a story over like decades of years, or in this case, like not that long, like a decade and a half, 20 years, that sort of thing. Not too sure how old he actually gets in the book, but either way, it gets emotional for a couple of different reasons, and it's just a lovely little book. It's a little heartwarming book. It's not long. This literally took me, I think, like a day and a half, something like that. Either way, I would recommend it if you're looking for something light and easy to read. I'd probably give it a 4.25 out of 5. Not stunning, not amazing, but a good book either way. So that's The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. So they're the 4 books I read in June. All actually have blue spines apart from The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which I didn't actually do on purpose, but there we go. So they're the 4 books I read in June. As I said, not a vast amount of books, probably could have squeezed in a 5th if I didn't go and have a baby. But either way, some great books in there. But let's get on to just a couple of books that I'm hoping to read in July. I'm not saying I'm going to finish them because, you know, baby, but I'm hoping to read them either way. Okay, there are 4 books that I'm going to try and read at some point in some way throughout July. So I'm reading 2 at the moment, the most of which I'm reading is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the kind of prequel to the Hunger Games, where it talks about Coriolanus Snow, or Coriolanus Snow. Difficult to read that one, why couldn't she just made that an easier name? Either way, it tells about his story and the prequel there. I've heard this isn't phenomenal, and I've heard the film is also not phenomenal. It's Rachel Zegler, who people just don't seem to like, and I don't quite get why, but I'm reading that at the moment. I'm enjoying it because it's just an easy read. I picked this up in the hospital when we were going through the birth, obviously not literally the birth, but pre-birth. Picked it up because it was just easy, something I could read without having to kind of like think too much. So I'm reading that. I'm also still reading The Killer Question by Janice Hallett. This comes out in September, so I'm hoping to try and get that finished before September. I mean, that sounds like an easy goal, but at the moment you should see how little I read. Reading that at the moment, this is another Janice Hallett where it's basically a crime thriller written in the form of kind of texts and things like this. Really enjoyable, love these sort of books. Basically, there is a quiz team, or there are multiple quiz teams that go to a quiz every week, and then a new quiz team rocks up and starts beating them all, and they don't like it, and they're texting each other like, we don't like this, we need to change the rules, we need to disqualify them, whatever. And then I've literally just got to a bit where one of the ex-team members previously, who hasn't been seen for a while, has been found dead, and I think things are about to kick off, and we might find out that actually maybe somebody involved in the quizzing was involved in the murder as well. I don't know. Either way, I love these sorts of books. They're just so engaging. So they're the 2 books I'm reading at the moment. Let's get on to a couple of books I'm hoping to pick up for different reasons throughout July. So I talked about James by Percival Everett that I want to pick up. This is because obviously I read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. I've been meaning to read this now for a while. It's nice and short. I'm hoping that means that it shouldn't take too long to read. The text is quite big as well. It is literally within like under 200 pages. So I'm hoping that should be a nice quick read within July, but we'll see. I'm hoping it's enjoyable. People have raved about it. Everybody said it was fantastic. And I think now I've read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, I'll understand it a little bit more as well. Not that I did start it, didn't understand it, and then chose to read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, just apparently that's a thing. So yeah, I'm hoping to read that in July. And then my July follower book club pick is Justin Cronin's The Ferryman. Now this is thick. I really should have started this by now, but I haven't. Either way, I have no idea what this is about. I think it's a little bit trippy, a little bit kind of, I don't know, not literal. So I'm hoping it will be an easy read because I can't deal with a difficult read right now. But either way, I need to try and get this finished by the end of July. So this is going to be on my July read. I'm hoping to pick this up. I don't know when. I'll probably try and finish Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes in the coming week when I go back to work, because I'll be able to listen to an audiobook a lot more because I'll be back into a routine. If not, then I will maybe try and pick this up towards the end of next week with the idea of, okay, I need to get this read, because The text does look relatively big, to be fair, so it shouldn't be too bad. We're looking at a book that is just over 500 pages long, about 530 pages long. So that's a long book. The audiobook I imagine is gonna be about 20 hours or so. So if I can 2 times speed that, 10 hours, maybe an hour, 2 hours a day, we're looking at about 5, 6, 7 days, and that's probably about 2 weeks of work. But either way, The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, home to read that in July. So there's a whole bunch of books I just talked about. Some books I read in June, some books I'm hoping to read in July. Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know if you liked any of them. Let me know if you disagree with any of my opinions. Either way, whether you do any of those things, drop a comment about something, like, and then your best thing you can do is subscribe. And until then, I'll see you in the next video. So goodbye.